Jordan Webb was 38 years old when a Fulton County judge handed his wife the house he built with his own hands and handed him a check for $4,200. He walked out of that courtroom with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a 2017 Honda Accord he would sleep in for the next 3 nights. Camille hadn't just left the marriage. She had spent 18 months quietly restructuring their joint accounts, erasing his financial footprint from the home he renovated room by room, and positioning herself for a life she had already chosen with someone else. She left that courthouse believing she had taken everything he had. She was right about the house. She was wrong about the man. 3 years later, Jordan's face appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine, and in the 48 hours that followed, Camille called his phone 97 times. He didn't answer once. What he did instead would cost her everything she thought she'd won. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Jordan Webb had been up since 5:15, not because he had to be. His shift at Harmon Logistics didn't start until 8, but because this was how he was, built, early, steady, ahead of the thing before it became a problem. He sat at the kitchen table in a gray t-shirt and joggers, laptop open, a yellow legal pad beside it with 3 neat columns of numbers. Mortgage, utilities, car insurance, HOA fee. He moved through each line with the same focus he brought to everything. Quiet, precise, nothing wasted. A mug of black coffee sat at his elbow, still steaming. The house around him was proof of who he was. 4 bedrooms in a southwest Atlanta neighborhood that had been coming up slowly for years. He and Camille had bought it 6 years ago when the bones were good, and the price reflected the work it needed. He had done most of that work himself. The kitchen backsplash, dark slate tile laid by hand on a cold October Saturday while Camille slept in. He had watched 4 YouTube tutorials the morning before he started, sitting at the same table to make sure he got it right. The back deck he rebuilt over 2 weekends in July heat because the contractor had quoted $4,000, and Jordan could not see the sense in paying someone else to do work he knew how to do. The bedroom closet he opened up over a long July weekend, so she'd have room for the clothes she kept buying. A contractor had quoted that at $4,000 too. Jordan had done it for $600 and a sore back he never mentioned. He saw something that needed doing, and he did it. Simple as that. He pulled up the household budget spreadsheet and cross-referenced it against the legal pad. Everything lined up. It always lined up when Jordan was the one looking at it. He heard the bedroom door open down the hall. Soft footsteps. Then Camille appeared in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in her silk robe, hair pulled back, already composed in the way she always managed to look composed, even at 6 in the morning. "You're up early," she said. "Wanted to run the numbers before the week starts." She moved to the coffee maker and poured herself a mug. "We're fine, Jordan. I went through everything last week. I know. I just like to see it myself." She glanced at the legal pad the way she sometimes glanced at things he was working on. A quick look, not dismissive exactly, but not interested either. Jordan set his coffee down. "I've been thinking about the Harmon situation. Martinez over in the Southeast region told me last week that half the independent carriers they work with are bleeding money on routing inefficiencies. Basic stuff. The kind of thing the big companies fixed a decade ago, but nobody's built a clean solution for the mid-size operators. I've had an idea for about 2 years now. Route optimization software built specifically for regional carriers. It wouldn't take much to "Did you call the HOA about the fence panel?" Camille asked. She was still looking at the window. Jordan stopped. He looked at her for a moment. "Not yet. They're going to cite us if we wait much longer. You know how they are. I'll call today." She nodded and moved toward the hallway. "Don't forget you have dinner with Darnell Thursday. I already told him you'd bring the drinks." And that was that. The idea, 2 years of quiet thinking, 2 years of mental blueprints drawn in the margins of his actual life, folded back into his pocket without a fight, the way it always did. He turned back to his laptop. He thought about the promotion. 4 years ago, his supervisor at Harmon had offered him the regional director role, a position that would have tripled his salary and put him on a track that felt, for the first time in his career, like it matched his actual capacity. He had been ready for it. He had known it then, and he knew it now. But Camille had said they weren't ready to relocate, said it gently, reasonably, with that particular tone she used when she wanted a conversation to be over. "We're finally settled here, Jordan. We just got the house. Let's not uproot everything for a title." He had let it go. He had trusted her read on it, the way he trusted her read on most things. He clicked over to the shared banking app to schedule a transfer for the water bill. The screen loaded. He stared at it. He clicked refresh. The number didn't change. He set his coffee down slowly and leaned forward. The joint savings account, the one they had been building for 6 years, the one he deposited half his paycheck into every 2 weeks without fail, showed a balance of $4,800. It should have been close to $60,000. $4,800. He read the number again, the way you read something you don't understand. Slowly, like a second pass might change it. It didn't change. He clicked to the transaction history, and the further back he scrolled, the colder the feeling in his chest became. Not panic, something more precise than panic. Because what Jordan Webb was about to find in those records, at 6 o'clock in the morning, in the kitchen of the house he built with his own hands, was not an accident. It was an architecture. And it had been 18 months in the making. He did not move for a long time. The screen glowed in the early morning quiet. He clicked to the transaction history. The list loaded, and he scrolled through it. The further back he went, the colder the feeling in his chest became. Not panic, not yet. Something more precise than panic. The specific sensation of a man who was very good at reading numbers, watching numbers tell him something he could not explain. He got up. He walked to the hallway and stood there for a moment, listening. Down the hall, behind the closed bedroom door, nothing moved. He went back to the table. He opened every account he had access to, checking, savings, the emergency fund they had set up 3 years ago. He cross-referenced the dates. He pulled up his last 8 pay stubs from the Harmon employee portal and lined the deposit amounts against the account activity. That was when he found it. 18 months ago, his direct deposit had been quietly unlinked from the joint savings account. It had happened in a single transaction update, a change to the routing structure that he had never seen, never signed off on, and would not have noticed unless he was looking at the account exactly the way he was looking at it right now. His paycheck had continued going into the joint checking account, normal, routine. But the automatic transfer that used to pull $2,000 out of every deposit and push it into savings had been altered. The amount had been dropped to $40. $40 per cycle for 18 months. While the balance bled out through withdrawals, he could not immediately trace because Camille handled the account logins and he did not have full visibility. He sat back. He thought about the last year and a half. about all the times he had asked about the savings, and Camille had said, "We're building. It's steady. I'll send you the update this weekend." And he had nodded and trusted her because that was the arrangement. She was organized. She managed the accounts. He focused on the house, on work, on making sure the life ran the way it was supposed to run. He had trusted her. He picked up his phone. He photographed every screen, the transaction history, the account structure page, the routing change, the withdrawal dates. Then he opened his laptop, forwarded everything he could access to an email address he created right there in the dark, and worked quietly for 2 hours. When he was done, he closed the laptop and set it exactly where it had been. He washed his mug. He straightened the legal pad. He went to work. The next 3 days, he was the same man he always was. He came home on time. He fixed a loose hinge on the back gate that had been bothering him for a week. He had dinner with Camille on Tuesday. She made salmon, talked about a closing at work, asked him something about Darnell, and he answered everything normally, cleanly, without a tremor in his voice. But at night, when the house was quiet, he thought. He thought about the promotion, about calling it a family decision when he never actually made the decision, when Camille had made it for him and he had accepted her reasoning like a man who didn't realize his ceiling had a hand on it. He thought about every business conversation she had redirected, every time he had brought up the logistics idea, and she had changed the subject so smoothly that he almost believed he had chosen to let it go. He thought about how she had always had the account logins, how she had set them up when they first moved in together, back when it had made sense for her to be the organized one, and how he had never questioned the arrangement because she had always framed it as competence, not control. The difference between those two things was the entire story of the last 9 years. On the morning of the 3rd day, he drove to Harmon and worked a full 8-hour shift. He came home at 5:30 and found a white legal envelope tucked between the storm door and the frame, his name printed on the front. He opened it in the doorway and read it once, then again. Petition for dissolution of marriage, filed 3 days ago, while he was sitting at this same kitchen table, photographing bank statements in the dark. He stood there in the cooling afternoon air, holding the papers, and something settled over him. Not surprise, not grief, not the hot, bright feeling he might have expected. Just clarity, flat and total and cold. This was never a collapse. This was a plan. The courtroom smelled like carpet cleaner and something older underneath it. Jordan sat at the table on the left. Camille sat at the table on the right. 9 years of marriage, and they were 8 feet apart, facing the same direction, which was somehow the loneliest arrangement he had ever been in. Her attorney had a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Jordan's monthly car note. His was a public advocate working 5 cases at once. And the account history, the one that had been quietly shaped for 18 months to tell a specific story, was about to tell it to a judge who had heard every version of this before and was no longer moved by any of them. The judge was a trim man in his late 50s named Honorable Carl Bryce. He had the face of someone who had seen every version of this particular story and was no longer moved by any of them. Camille's attorney was a woman named Hargrove. Sharp gray suit, a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Jordan's monthly car note. She stood when she spoke, and she spoke like someone who had rehearsed every word twice before breakfast. "Your Honor," Hargrove said, her voice smooth and unhurried. The documentation before the court clearly reflects that mortgage payments on the marital property were drawn exclusively from the restructured joint savings account for the preceding 22 months. My client made disproportionate and consistent financial contributions to the property's current market value, both through those payments and through her professional management of the household accounts. Jordan kept his eyes forward. Professional management. That was what they were calling it. She cited figures. She cited dates. She presented a clean, tight narrative about a woman who had carried the financial weight of a home, while her husband's contributions had become, in the documented record, minimal. She did not say he didn't contribute. She didn't have to. The account history said it for her. Because the account history had been shaped for 18 months to say exactly that. The house was awarded to Camille at 10:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. The 4-bedroom house in southwest Atlanta. The kitchen backsplash he had laid by hand on a cold October Saturday. The back deck he rebuilt in July heat because $4,000 seemed like money someone else should keep. The bedroom closet he opened up so she would have room for the clothes she kept buying. All of it gone. Awarded on paper to the woman who managed the accounts. The settlement check was cut for $4,200. His share of what remained in the joint savings after. Camille's attorneys argued her disproportionate contribution to the balance. Jordan's advocate placed it on the table in front of him without a word. Jordan picked it up. He looked at it. Then he folded it once and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He walked out. The Accord had 2 suitcases in the trunk, his laptop bag on the passenger seat, and his tool bag in the back seat. He had packed them 4 days ago. He drove without a direction for a while, through neighborhoods he knew, past streets he had driven 1,000 times, past the exit that would have taken him toward the house that was no longer his. He did not take that exit. Around 9 o'clock, he pulled into the lot behind a Kroger on Cascade Road and parked near the back, away from the lights at the entrance. He turned off the engine. He sat in the quiet. The parking lot lights threw a sickly orange glow through the windshield that made everything look slightly wrong, slightly unreal. He lay back in the reclined driver's seat. He could call Darnell. He knew that. Darnell would answer on the first ring. Darnell would have the room ready before Jordan finished explaining. But he couldn't do it yet. Not tonight. He needed to feel the full weight of this before he let anyone else near it. He lay there and let the quiet be what it was. Then he reached to the passenger seat. He pulled his laptop onto his chest. He opened it. The screen light was sharp in the dark car. He opened a blank document. At the top, he typed 2 words. Webroot Solutions. He stared at them for a long moment. Then he started to write. A $4,200 check in his glove compartment. 2 suitcases in the trunk. A parking lot in southwest Atlanta that smelled like the end of something. And on his laptop screen, 4 pages of rough framework for a route optimization software platform that he had been carrying in his head for 2 years, while a woman redirected every conversation he tried to have about it. Most people would have closed the laptop. Jordan Webb kept writing. And what happened next in a 24-hour diner at 2 in the morning 4 months later would change everything. Jordan woke up wrong. His neck had locked somewhere around 3 in the morning, and his lower back had opinions about the driver's seat that he did not have the energy to argue with. The orange parking lot glow had faded into the gray-pink light of early morning. He sat up slowly, rolled his neck until something released, looked at the clock on his phone. 5:47 a.m., 14 texts. None of them from anyone he needed to answer right now. He pulled his laptop off the passenger seat and checked what he had written the night before. 4 pages of rough framework. route optimization for small regional carriers, the kind of companies that ran 8 to 20 trucks and got eaten alive by inefficiencies that a Fortune 500 operation would fix on a Tuesday afternoon without anyone noticing. He read through it. It was rough. It was also real. He drove to the 24-hour gym on Campbellton, stood under a hot shower for longer than necessary, and let himself have that much. Then he dressed, looked at himself in the mirror, and called Darnell. Darnell picked up on the first ring. He always did. "I need a few weeks," Jordan said. A short pause, not hesitation, just Darnell registering the weight of the words. "Room's ready," Darnell said. Not what happened. Not "are you okay?" Just "the room is ready." Jordan stood in the gym locker room and felt something in his chest loosen by one notch. He stayed with Darnell for 3 weeks. They fell into a rhythm without negotiating it. Darnell cooked most nights. They ate at the kitchen table. They talked about work and the Braves and things that required no weight. Camille's name almost never came up. Jordan was grateful for that more than he ever said. But the nights were a different thing. He lay in the dark of the spare room, and the marriage came apart in his hands, whether he wanted it to or not. Not the drama of it, the quieter stuff. The small, consistent architecture of how 9 years had actually gone. There was the promotion regional director, 4 years into the marriage, a jump that would have tripled his income and put him on a track he could feel in his bones was right. He had told Camille about it over dinner, and she had said, "We're not ready to relocate, Jordan. We've just gotten stable here." He had heard the word "we" and let it stand. He found out 2 years later, at a company happy hour, that Camille had called his supervisor's office directly and described the opportunity as a family situation. The supervisor had assumed Jordan was declining. Jordan had never been asked. He lay there and thought about that. Let himself think about it plainly without softening it. Then there were the business ideas. He had brought a version of what would become Webroot to Camille twice. Both times she had listened carefully, nodded thoughtfully, and walked him through every reason the timing was wrong, every risk they couldn't afford, every way it made more sense to wait. She was never cruel about it. She was never dismissive. She was reasonable in a tone that closed doors so quietly you didn't notice the latch catching. He thought about how many times he had made himself smaller, because she always had a reason that smaller was safer. And how, for a long time, he had called that love. 3 weeks in, he told Darnell he was leaving. Darnell put down his fork. "You don't have to do that." "I know." "Then why?" Jordan looked at his plate for a moment. "Because I can't rebuild here. It's not you. It's the feeling of being held. I need to be the one holding." Darnell didn't argue further. He helped Jordan carry his bags to the Accord in the morning without a word. That was not the same as the first night in the Kroger parking lot. That night had been shock. This was a choice. Jordan knew the difference, and the difference mattered more than he could easily explain. He picked up an overnight cleaning shift at a commercial office facility. 5 nights a week, out by 5 in the morning, decent hourly rate for quiet work that left his mind free. He showered at the gym. He ate at a 24-hour diner on Campbellton Road where the coffee was strong and the counter staff learned his order without being asked. He worked on Webroot solutions in every spare hour. Parking lots, library Wi-Fi zones, the back corner table of the diner near the window. That was his life for 4 months. It was hard in the way that purposeful things are hard, which is a different kind of hard from the kind that just grinds you down. He was at the diner late on a weeknight, deep in the carrier pricing model, when he noticed the woman sitting across the room at a two-top near the window. Early 50s, maybe. Natural hair, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. A dense stack of tabbed documents in front of her. A red pen working through them with unhurried precision. A cup of black coffee sat beside her, untouched. She looked up from her documents. She looked at his screen. Then she looked at him. "What are you building?" she asked. Her name was Petra Okafor. 20 years as a corporate litigator in Midtown Atlanta before she walked away and pivoted to small business consulting and angel investment. 11 years, 11 businesses, 8 profitable. She asked him 3 questions in the first 4 minutes and walked him directly into a pitch without him feeling the door open. And what she said when he finished answering everything, 2 hours later, over refilled cups of coffee, was the first time in 3 years that someone had looked at what Jordan was building and said, "The problem is real. The market is underserved. Call me when the deck is tight." They talked for 2 hours. Petra Okafor had spent 20 years as a corporate litigator at a firm in Midtown Atlanta before walking away from it. The way people walk away from things that have taken everything they were willing to give. She had pivoted to small business consulting and angel investment 11 years ago. 11 businesses and 8 profitable. She spoke about her failures the same way she spoke about her successes, as data, as information, as things that had taught her what she now knew. She asked hard questions and let the silence after each one do its work. She didn't fill space the way people do when they're more interested in sounding sharp than in hearing the answer. Jordan answered everything. He had been living inside this framework for 4 months in parking lots and libraries and the back corner of this diner, and he knew it the way you know, something you've built with your own hands in the dark. When she poked at the pricing model, he had a response. When she challenged his assumption about carrier adoption rates, he acknowledged the gap and told her exactly how he planned to close it. At one point, she set her pen down and just looked at him. "You've been working on this alone," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. How long?" 4 months. She looked at him steadily. Something in her expression shifted. Not pity, nothing close to it. More like the particular focus of someone recalibrating. "The problem is real," she said. "The market is underserved. Your instinct on the pricing tier is correct." She paused. "How tight is your deck?" "It needs work." "Call me when it doesn't." She reached into the leather folder beside her documents and pulled out a business card. White, clean, no logo. Just her name, a phone number, and the words Okafor Advisory in small print. Jordan took the card and looked at it for a moment. "Why?" he said. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about my background. Why would you give me your card?" Petra picked up her red pen and tapped it once against her stack of documents. "I've been doing this for 11 years, she said. "I have a good sense of what I'm looking at." She left a 20 on the table and walked out into the dark. He called her 4 days later. The deck was tight. What followed was not easy. Nothing worth having ever arrived easy, and Jordan had long since made peace with that particular truth. But things moved. For the first time in longer than he could name, things actually moved. Petra sharpened his pitch over 3 weeks of sessions at her office in Buckhead, a clean, spare space that smelled like coffee and focus. She connected him to his first 2 carrier clients through her own network. A regional outfit in Macon, running 14 trucks, and a smaller operation out of Columbus that had been hemorrhaging money on deadhead runs for 3 years, and knew it. Both signed service agreements. Both saw measurable improvement within 90 days. She invested enough to get Webroot Solutions off the ground. In exchange, she took 12% equity. Jordan kept 73. He worked like a man who understood exactly what the alternative looked like. 16-hour days were the short ones. He moved out of the Accord and into a studio apartment. Nothing fancy, just walls and a door that locked. He hired his first contractor, then his second. Year 1, 4 carrier contracts. Year 2, 9. Year 3, $4.3 million in annual revenue. $11 million projected for the year ahead. Jordan moved out of the apartment and into a house. His house. Ground that had only ever been his. Every payment was his. Every repair was his. The deed had one name on it. He was 41 now, and his face was on the cover of Forbes. The Forbes feature ran on a Tuesday morning. His publicist sent a text. Jordan set his phone face down and kept working. Across Atlanta, in a Barnes & Noble on a Saturday afternoon, Camille Fontaine picked up the magazine from a display rack, recognized the jaw before she registered the name, and stood there for a long moment while her friend talked about a dinner reservation Camille could not hear a single word of. She bought the magazine. She called his number at 4:17 that afternoon. He was in a meeting. He turned the phone over, saw her name, and turned it back. That was the beginning of 97 calls. None of them answered. And what Jordan was already doing in the background while she dialed would determine exactly how much those 97 calls were going to cost her. Camille called again while he was walking back to his office. He let it ring. She called again before he reached his desk. He sat down, opened his email, and responded to 3 messages that had been waiting since morning. By the time he drove home that evening, she had called 11 times. By midnight, 23. By the following morning, 97 missed calls. Not one voicemail. Petra was already at the table when he walked in. She looked at the call log the way she read everything, straight through, no reaction, processing. She set the phone back down. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Jordan looked at the call log for a moment. He turned the phone face down. "I want to know why she's calling," he said. "Not what she wants. Why she needs to. There's a difference." He paused. 97 calls. No voicemail. That's not someone who misses you. That's someone who needs something and can't figure out how to ask for it. He set his coffee down. Pull up everything on Bradford Alcott. Petra reached for her laptop. The file on Bradford Alcott arrived through Avery Toll, a compact man in his mid-50s with the particular stillness of someone who had spent a long career watching people before they knew they were being watched. He met Jordan in a sandwich shop on Memorial Drive with a glass of water, a manila folder, and no expression worth describing. He waited until Jordan sat down. Then he slid the folder across the table. Jordan read it the way he reviewed contracts, straight through, no skipping, no assumptions. 18 pages of source documentation. Timestamps, photographs, financial records, and 3 pages of sourced witness testimony. The timeline started 14 months before Camille filed for divorce. The investment properties were on page 9. 2 parcels, one in East Atlanta, one in Douglasville, co-listed under a shell LLC called Fontaine Alcott Property Group. The LLC had been formed 7 months before Camille filed. The properties had been funded in part through cash transfers from the joint savings account she had restructured, the same account that had been quietly drained of his direct deposit linkage 18 months before he ever saw a divorce summons. Neither property had appeared in divorce discovery. Combined current value, approximately $890,000. Jordan closed the folder. He set his hands flat on the table. He did not say anything for a moment. "How clean is the paper trail on the LLC funding?" Jordan asked. "Clean enough," Avery said. "The transfers are traceable." She just counted on it not being found. "Take 4 days," Jordan said. "Full LLC filing history. Every amendment. Every asset attachment." Avery picked up the folder. 4 days, he said. He stood, dropped a 5 on the table for the water, and left without ceremony. Jordan sat alone for a long time, looking at the window. The divorce was not a collapse. That was the thing he kept turning over. A collapse was something that happened to both people at once, sudden, mutual, unplanned. What Camille had done was something else entirely. She had drawn a blueprint 14 months out. She had moved money, formed an LLC, positioned assets, and filed paperwork. She had done it carefully and incrementally, in steps small enough that no single one looked like anything more than routine financial management. She had built a trap with a 9-year foundation, and she had walked out of it clean. He had paid her $4,200 with a check that sat in his glove compartment while he slept in a parking lot. He let that sit for a moment. He let it be exactly as ugly as it was. Then he left the money for his coffee and walked back to his car. Avery delivered in 4 days as agreed, 60 pages. The full LLC filing history, the financial trail, the affair timeline. Jordan forwarded everything to Petra within the hour, and Petra had it on Diana Osei's desk by that afternoon. Diana Osei was a financial fraud attorney who, according to Petra, was the last person opposing counsel wanted to see across a conference table. She reviewed the full package in 2 days. Her assessment arrived in 4 sentences, and the 5th sentence, the one that would end Camille Fontaine's plan entirely, was, "I am prepared to file." Diana Osei was precise and relentless, and had built her practice on cases exactly like this one, document-intensive, long in the litigating, and satisfying in ways that other attorneys found too expensive to care about. She reviewed the full package in 2 days. Her assessment arrived in 4 sentences. The LLC formation timeline, the transferred funds, the deliberate omission from divorce discovery. Together, they constituted a viable civil claim for fraudulent concealment of marital assets. She was prepared to file. Jordan said he needed a few more days. Diana said she would be ready when he was. He continued running Webroot. He reviewed carrier contracts, sat in product meetings, signed off on a hiring decision that had been pending for 2 weeks. He let the information sit in him the way concrete sets, quietly under pressure, until it was load-bearing. Then Darnell called. "She reached out to Mama," Darnell said. "She asked Mama to help smooth things over with you. Said she just wants to talk." Jordan was quiet for a moment. Then he thanked his brother and hung up. He called his mother. Vivian picked up on the second ring. "Don't," Jordan said. A pause, warm and knowing. "Baby," Vivian said, "I already know." Another pause. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Avery's final report arrived the following Wednesday. Bradford Alcott's development firm had been over-leveraged for at least 18 months. 2 projects were in formal default. Combined outstanding debt, just over $4 million. Alcott had been circling refinancing options, trying to find collateral that would satisfy a lender. The 2 Fontaine Alcott LLC properties were supposed to be that collateral. The problem was that both properties had come in significantly below what Brad and Camille needed. The numbers didn't work for the refinancing deal. Without the refinancing, Alcott Group's defaulted projects would likely cascade. And Brad Alcott, facing that collapse, would need solutions that Camille could not provide. Jordan set the report down and leaned back in his chair. 97 calls. He had been turning it over since the day the call log appeared on his phone. Why she needs to, not what she wants. Now the picture was complete. Camille was not calling because she missed him. She was calling because her attorney had almost certainly told her that a window existed in the divorce decree for either party to contest asset division if fraud evidence emerged. A clean legal release signed by Jordan would close that window permanently. She had called 97 times because she needed one signature. He picked up his phone and called Diana Osse. "File it," he said. "Today?" Diana said. It wasn't a question. "Today," Jordan confirmed. He heard the sound of a keyboard. "Done by 3, she said. That afternoon, he asked Petra to reach out to Camille's attorney's office. The message was brief and deliberately neutral. Jordan Webb was open to a brief conversation. One location, a private conference room at Diana Osse's law firm in Buckhead. One date, 2 weeks out. "She thinks she's walking into a negotiation," Petra said, reviewing the message. "I know," Jordan said. "She's going to come in expecting to hand me something." "I know that, too." Petra sent the message. They had a response within the hour. Camille agreed immediately. That evening, Jordan drove to Vivian's house in College Park. She had cooked baked chicken and rice and green beans. The kitchen smelled like every meal he had ever come home to. He sat at the same table where he had done homework in the 3rd grade. They ate. After a while, Jordan set down his fork. "In 2 weeks," he said, "it ends." Vivian nodded. She picked up her glass, held it with both hands, and looked at him the way she had always looked at him, like she was reading something the rest of the world couldn't see on his face. "I know what you've built," she said. "I know every step it cost you." She paused. "And I know you slept in that car." Darnell talks. Jordan looked at the table. "You didn't call me once to complain," she said. "Not once. You just put your head down and built something real." She reached across and refilled his tea. "Whatever happens in 2 weeks, you already have my blessing. You've had it since the night you slept in that parking lot and didn't quit." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, ma'am," he said. 2 weeks. Jordan arrived at Diana Osse's firm at 8:47 in the morning, took the chair directly facing the door, poured a glass of water, and placed both hands flat on the table. He had chosen that seat deliberately. He wanted to be the first thing Camille saw when she walked in. At 9:04, the door opened. She was in a charcoal wrap dress, heels, hair pulled back smooth. She looked the way she always looked when she needed to make an impression. Her eyes moved across the room and landed on Jordan. Then they moved to Petra, then to Diana Osse, whose name Camille clearly didn't know, and whose stillness was its own signal. And then Jordan reached for the leather portfolio in front of him. The conference room was on the 22nd floor. Glass walls, a long oval table, a view of the Atlanta skyline that never fully lost its effect. Diana sat at the far end with a closed leather portfolio. No coffee, no small talk. Petra stood near the windows, arms folded loosely, looking out over Buckhead. The morning light came in flat and bright. At 9:04, the door opened. Camille walked in first. Charcoal wrap dress, heels, hair pulled back smooth and clean. She looked the way she always looked when she needed to make an impression. put together in a way that took effort but was designed to appear effortless. Her attorney followed. Gerald Fitch, late 50s, navy suit, the kind of silver-haired presentation that was meant to signal authority before he opened his mouth. Camille's eyes moved across the room. In one practiced sweep, they landed on Jordan. Something passed across her face. Not quite surprise, not quite relief, some complicated thing she controlled almost immediately. Then her eyes moved to Petra, then to Diana. She didn't know Diana's name. Jordan could see that in the half-second pause, the slight recalibration behind her eyes. Diana was sitting at the table with the particular stillness of someone who had been in this kind of room 100 times. That stillness was its own signal. Camille sat down across from Jordan. Fitch took the chair beside her and began arranging papers. Jordan. Camille's voice was warm, careful. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Jordan said. Fitch outlined the proposition smoothly, professionally, a revisitation of certain settlement arrangements, a goodwill gesture, flexibility on both sides. All Jordan needed to do was sign a comprehensive release of any future claims related to the marriage or marital property. Clean, simple. Everyone moves forward. When Fitch finished, the room was quiet. Jordan did not respond right away. He let the silence sit. He took a slow breath, looked down at the table once, and then reached for the leather portfolio in front of him. He opened it. He removed a single folder, placed it on the table, and slid it across the smooth surface toward the center, directly in front of Camille and Fitch. He did not say anything yet. Fitch picked up the folder and opened it. The first page was the LLC registration for Fontaine Alcott Properties, filed 7 months before the divorce papers arrived at Jordan's door. Behind it, the financial records showing the funding trail from the restructured joint savings account. Behind that, the timeline of the relationship between Camille and Bradford Alcott, sourced and dated, beginning 14 months before the filing. Behind that, a single-page written statement signed by a professional contact, describing 2 separate industry events at which Camille had described her husband as brilliant, but not leadership material, someone better suited to support roles. And on the very last page, the cover sheet of the civil fraud complaint for fraudulent concealment of marital assets, filed in Fulton County 4 days prior. Diana O'Sea's name printed at the bottom as counsel of record. Jordan waited until Fitch had turned enough pages to understand what he was holding. Then he spoke. His voice was even. He did not rush it. He did not raise it. He spoke for 6 minutes without interruption, laying out, in the order it happened, exactly what had been done and when, and what it had cost him. The account restructuring. The LLC, the properties that never appeared in discovery. The 14 months of planning before the papers ever arrived. The promotion that was quietly killed. The business ideas turned to ash by a patient, reasonable voice in the dark. The night he slept in a parking lot behind a Kroger with a $4,200 check in his glove compartment and 4 pages of a business framework on a laptop he had paid for himself. He did not perform any of it. He simply reported it. "I'm not angry at you anymore," he said. "I was. But what I am now is finished." He looked at her directly. "The law is going to handle the rest." He folded his hands and said nothing further. Fitch was still reading. His eyes moved from page to page with the increasingly careful attention of a man doing arithmetic that wasn't adding up the way he'd been told it would. Camille sat very still, and something left her face. Not all at once, not dramatically, quietly, the way a light behind a curtain goes out. Page by page, as Fitch turned through the folder, the composed, practiced steadiness she had carried into the room simply wasn't there anymore. The civil fraud complaint moved through the courts the way Diana O'Shea moved through everything quietly, precisely, and without mercy. The court issued an asset freeze on the 2 LLC investment properties within 3 weeks. $890,000 in real estate, locked and untouchable. Bradford Alcott had been counting on those properties as refinancing collateral for 2 over-leveraged development projects that were already bleeding. Without them, he had nothing. And the life Camille had carried in her mind, detailed, vivid, already half-lived in her imagination, was about to find out what was actually waiting for it on the other side. The court issued an asset freeze on the 2 LLC investment properties within 3 weeks of the complaint being filed. $890,000 in real estate, locked and untouchable. Bradford Alcott had been counting on those properties as refinancing collateral for 2 over-leveraged development projects that were already bleeding. Without them, he had nothing to present to his lenders, nothing to restructure around, nothing to hold the weight of what he had built on promises and projections, and a woman who had assured him the numbers were clean. They were not clean. The first development went into formal default 31 days after the freeze. The second followed 2 weeks after that. Camille's firm placed her on administrative leave the same week the complaint became a matter of public record. The administrative leave lasted 3 weeks. Then it became a termination. Brad ended the relationship somewhere in the middle of all of it. Jordan never learned the exact date and did not try to find out. 2 people who had built something on calculation had simply presented each other with the final bill. Camille reached out through her attorney, requesting a brief off-the-record meeting. No lawyers present. A coffee shop in their old neighborhood on the west side, a place they had gone together sometimes on Saturday mornings, a long time ago. Jordan agreed. He brought Petra. Camille arrived looking different than she had in the conference room, less assembled, like something she had been holding together for a long time had gotten heavier. She sat down, wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, and talked. She said she had made mistakes. She said she had been scared of how capable Jordan was, scared of what that meant for her, scared of being left behind by a man who might one day outgrow her. She said that in some way, the pressure she had put on him had come from knowing somewhere deep down that he was capable of exactly this. She gestured vaguely at what this meant. The Forbes cover, the company, the conference room. She said that maybe, in her own way, she had pushed him toward it. She let that sit in the air between them. Jordan listened to every word. He did not interrupt. He did not shift in his chair. He let her finish the whole thing, right to the end. Then he let a moment of quiet pass. "You didn't call me 97 times because you missed me," he said. His voice was the same as it had been in the conference room, level, unhurried, impossible to rattle. "You called because you needed something. You have always only ever needed something from me." He looked at her steadily. "The difference now is that I have nothing left that belongs to you." Camille held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked down at her cup. "The court will handle the rest," Jordan said. He stood. Petra stood beside him. He did not look back on his way out the door. The civil case settled 8 months later. $340,000, structured, paid out over time in a legal agreement that would follow Camille Fontaine's credit history for years. Diana O'Shea called Jordan when the final papers were signed. "Done," she said. "Thank you," he said. That was the whole conversation. Brad Alcott's firm filed for bankruptcy 14 months after the asset freeze. Darnell's contracting firm won its first commercial bid, a subcontracting role on a WebRoot office build-out that Jordan had quietly made sure came Darnell's way. Darnell called him when he found out. He didn't say much, neither did Jordan. They didn't need to. 18 months after the conference room, WebRoot Solutions closed a Series A funding round of $14 million. The day the announcement ran, Jordan sat in his office on the third floor of a building in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward. 34 employees beyond the glass wall behind him. A waiting list of carrier clients. A company that had started as 2 words on a blank document in a parking lot at 2 in the morning. Petra sat across from his desk with the term sheet, reviewing the final language one last time. She looked up. "How do you feel?" she asked. Jordan considered the question the way he considered most things, honestly, without rushing it. "Like I've been building this house for 3 years," he said. "And I just moved in." Petra smiled. "It's a good house." "Yes," Jordan said. He turned toward the window. The Atlanta skyline stretched out below him, bright and wide in the morning light. "It is." He stood there quietly. And somewhere beneath all of it, beneath the term sheet and the $14 million and the 34 employees and the carrier contracts, he thought of a parking lot on Cascade Road, orange light through a car window, a laptop open on his chest in the dark, 2 words at the top of a blank page. He had never needed anyone to see him clearly. He just needed enough time to see himself.